Recently, Mongoose Rodeo released a demo for Crowsworn, which shows how exactly the game will look and feel. And honestly, Crowsworn really has a lot of potential to be a good game. It looks amazing and the gameplay is extremely fluid and flows very nice. Just look at this animation and how smooth it is. And not to mention the gorgeous cutscenes that were present. That's because they hire a studio only for this, which is awesome. But along all of those surprises, there was another thing that drew my attention and other people playing the demo. Crownsworn feels kinda similar to Hollow Knight. This is expected. The creators of Crowsworn drew their inspiration from Devil May Cry, Bloodborne, and at the top of the list, Hollow Knight. And from it they had their most ideas. Now, to have a little disclaimer, this video purpose is not to call Crowsworn a ripoff or a clone or anything like that. So consider the title and the thumbnail more of a clickbait, but not really. If you don't know, there was already a wave of hate comments back when the Kickstarter campaign started, but that issue was resolved pretty quickly. Team Cherry, the creators behind Hollow Knight, said that they like the game, and even their marketing director, Lev, joined Mongoose's team. Despite the game feeling similar to Hollow Knight, people still like it regardless. And that's why the campaign earned 10 times the amount needed, being one of the most successful Kickstarter games. Even I am a backer of this game, but only a low tier, so I didn't got my hands on the demos. So all of the footage that I show in this video is linked into the description, and I highly encourage to check them out so you can see with your own eyes the demo in its fullest, and all the cool things that they presented. We have to remember that Crowsworn is a metroidvania, a genre that defines 2D platformer games with bosses and ability upgrade progression system. There are not too many metroidvania games compared to the other genres, and those that are often are not very good or too memorable. Metroidvania games only started to increase in number around 2016-2017 if I'm not mistaken. Editor's note, which is still me, when I was saying not too many Metroidvanias, I was referring at the new releases or the modern type of Metroidvania. Games like Metroid and Castlevania, and these were many of them back in the day, but I'm referring to the modern type. So back to the video. That basically means people haven't played too many of them, so it's much easier to see the similarities between them. Many of them could just be classified as Metroidvania mechanics, and because Hollow Knight is somewhat recent and one of the most popular Metroidvanias, of course you're gonna see similarities in other games of that type, even if it's intentional or not. Lev, the marketing director, said in an interview that it is normal that people will be inspired by Hollow Knight because Team Cherry managed to use what they have at its fullest.
There's only so much you can do with Unity in a 2D for a 2D game, and the fact is that Team Cherry and Ari were very clever with how they developed Hollow Knight in a way to make it super efficient, and it's also very good. So so if you depart from that to a great degree, you risk making something bad.
So basically he says that similarities are bound to happen because the formula was so good. To avoid these things, you need to add enough things and ideas into your game to make it feel different and not just a clone. If you don't manage to set the game apart from the inspirations, well, the game will not feel unique and people will forget about it pretty quickly, or just drop it if they find another better one. For example, if Silksong releases not too long after Crowsworn, if the game fails to be unique, players will just drop it and will play Silksong, because why would you play something inferior when you have the original? And that's what I want to do in this video, to see if Mongoose Studio will ever cross the line of being too similar to Hollow Knight. So now that we have set the foundation and established how it's not really fair to nitpick the similarities between these games and compare them, even more now that the game is not even out yet, let's actually do that. To make things even more fair and avoid comparisons that are not actually valid, I will use also other Metroidvania games like Blasphemous, Ori and many others, to see if they have done something similar, and even then my gaming knowledge is not very good, so feel free to correct me if I'm saying something wrong and if other games have that mechanic too. So let's get into it. The demo starts with a poem, like in Hollow Knight. Okay, it actually starts with a super badass cutscenes. God, I love this. The first thing we can see are those crystals that gives you money. In Hollow Knight there are these geo deposits that will give geo by smacking them a bit. This is also in Ori and gives you XP, but you don't have to smack it to get the XP. Visually it looks similar, but I guess that there are other games that have this too. So it's just a rock that gives you money. The next similarity is what I will say a copy. In Hollow Knight you get a new ability when you collect a glowing ball or other stuff similar to that. After that a particle effect will appear and an art of the ability accompanied by some mystic music where you'll see the name of the ability and what it does. Crowsworn has kinda the exact same thing. There are games like Blasphemous and Ori that have something similar, but neither of them is exactly like this. So this one is one of the big similarities. Next up we have an enemy similar to the Tick enemy, but this is just a metroidvania element. You know, Blasphemous has kinda the same now. If you have this type of platforms, you are kinda obligated to put this type of enemy into your game, otherwise I will come to your house and slap you. With the carry-on flask acquired, I think it's time to talk about the HUD. Crowsworn uses health heart system instead of a health bar, so you cannot really be one-shotted. The spiral here can just be considered a more stylish mana bar. Hollow Knight uses this for both healing and spells, but in Crowsworn are two separate things. The similarities appear when we look at the healing flask. Instead of having multiple flasks that will heal one heart or a mana cost or other things like that, in order to use the carry-on flask you have to hit an enemy a certain amount of times, then you can heal multiple hearts. In Hollow Knight after hitting an enemy 3 times, you can use the soul to heal 1 mask. So you have to hit an enemy to be able to heal, but Crowsworn kinda changes that to the point it's sent apart from it. It is more similar to the bind ability from Silksong, and I wouldn't really call that an inspiration since Silksong is not even out and probably will never be. But even then Silksong uses mana to heal, so Crowsworn gets the pass on this one. Also, when you have 1 life left, the screen will have this effect around the corners and the last health with glow as well. And this is, I will say, pretty much like in Hollow Knight. It's not very original, but visually is kinda the same. Then we have this enemy. I'm not very confident to talk about this guy. An enemy with a shield is so generic, like, guys, it's in every fucking game. But his silhouette looks similar to this guy's, and they also have this 1-2 sword swing attack. But that doesn't say too much. What does though is both of them look upwards with their shield. Personally, I never have seen an enemy doing something like that. In Blasphemous you can just kill these enemies from above. It also has a nail weapon? What? Moving on to the pogo mechanics. Pogo means you can jump off an enemy if you hit them in the air. Blasphemous has this too, but you can do it only once. In Hollow Knight you can do this infinitely, and I think Crowsworn is the same, but I'm not sure. I can't test myself and I haven't seen too much of it. But wait! Zelda 2 has the exact same thing! On the same topic we have the spiky pogo. Consulting my gaming knowledge, spikes are only there to hurt you, but in these two games they are also used as a platform mechanic, and I never heard about something like this before. When I play Hollow Knight, for the majority of the game I didn't even know you can do that, I saw that in a YouTube video. Next up we have the first boss of the demo. Not too much to say about this guy other than he has a nail as a weapon. After the boss we get access to the wall jump. Another thing that is a bit awkward to talk about. I think all platforms have a wall jump, but a big portion of them have the wall jump only in the form that you jump from one wall to another, or where you can only jump into specific places, rather than just having one wall. But games like Super Meat Boy and Ori have this form too, and it's exactly the same. So nowadays these have become just a standard thing in Metroidvanias. Next up we have the health upgrade shard. In Hollow Knight you can find mask shards around the map, and once you have 4 of them you get a new health. Crowsworn has the kinda the same thing, except Ori and the Will of the Wisp have these 2, but instead of 4 fragments they are just 2. The rest of the games I know just increase your life without collecting fragments, like just finding a new flask or having something that increases your maximum HP. It's not very uncommon, but it does feel similar at the first glance. Let's look a bit at the map now. Maps in games are as old as the real ones. They were in games since the beginning. Only a small portion of games don't have a map. But what does raise an eyebrow are those 4 corners and also the left and right arrow to scroll the menu, just like in Hollow Knight. Games usually have the map separate from the other menu, like Blasphemous, but at the end of the day it is just a menu, and it's even much easier to navigate it through, so I think it will not be too long until this will become the standard, if it's not already. Oh, I forgot to mention that the character can look up and down, but well, do what you want with this information. Now we get to the really juicy part of this video. The most obvious copy in the game is an ability called Corvian Slam. By paying a third of your mana, you can perform a downward attack, and this is a 1-to-1 with the Desolate Dive from Hollow Knight. A downward slash attack is quite common, but the 2 abilities are visually almost the same. It feels much more like a reskin. It even has the same cost and the same effect of going from one room to another with it. My personal opinion on this is this would be better if it was a side skill rather than an ability, and visually to be at least a little bit more different, like having a small AoE attack where you slash the enemies below, kinda like in Blasphemous. Crownsworn already has a similar flair to Hollow Knight, and having another thing like this will make the players instantly think of another game, which depends on the situation, but usually you don't really want to do that. But the rest of the things are not like this, so let's see what we have left. We have this swordy body who seems to be a lost cousin of our crystal body, but that's yet another kind of standard enemy. Then there are these platforms that falls after you touch them. Again, every game has this, it just looks different. Then we have this ability. You can say that this looks like the Vengeful Spirit, but not really. This is more like an ultimate move, and at the end of the day this is just a forward magic attack. And that's kinda everything for the demo, but to have a bit more content, let's get a bit into the trailers as well. Everything seems to be normal here, the game looks good, I see only innovative things here, and oh no. Okay, but probably this is just an aesthetic thing, that you can just sit on it and nothing happens. It is possible to be there just, I don't know, as a cameo, or just in a bench in a town where you just sit down and relax for a bit. I'm more than sure that this is not the resting place like in Hollow Knight, because in the demo we have a keeper as a checkpoint that he will revive us every time we'll die, which is actually one of the coolest methods to be bring back to life. It's pretty unique, I haven't seen a game like this. So let's left the bench for another time. So, as you can see, a lot of the similarities are just common things in Metroidvania. There are many other things that I could compare, but I will just say the same thing as I've said, like hey, this is just a standard thing in Metroidvania. The reason why I mention even some of them is because if someone sees 1 or 2 big similarities, they will start to see all of them, even if that's not exactly the same thing. I try to debunk some of those misconceptions and comments like hey, this is also from Hollow Knight, when in reality it is in all other games, but your mind just made that first connection, so you see it everywhere now. Like I said in the beginning, many people compare the game just because Hollow Knight is a recent game and it's still fresh in our minds. I also have to remind you that this is just a demo. That means a lot of the innovating stuff over the game is not even present here. so of course it will look more standard. If you take a look at Hollow Knight demo, you'll probably think it's a shitty game with nothing special. It still looks good, but mechanically, well, let's just say the final product is vastly different. Hollow Knight took a lot of time to get into the form that is now, and kinda the same thing can be said about Crowsworn demo. I mean, we haven't seen many things like how you can just throw your scythe like a fucking boomerang, or how you can become a spinning wheel, or the guns, man, the guns. And I guess many Americans weren't very happy about this, but it's understandable. Just look at this badass move. Even I will be mad that I'm not American. The majority of the combat mechanics are not present. This also applies to the platforms mechanics like the diagonal move or this barrel cannon move. And man, can you go back and talk about the animation and art in this game? Unlike in Hollow Knight, a lot of NPCs and bosses from the trailer are very detailed, and the movement, man, look at this, how the character moves in general is something that I never seen before in the game. I can go so far and say that even Silksong doesn't look this smooth and fluid in the trailers. It is clearly that Crowsworn is a much more fast pace, and they have put tons of keyframes to make this movement possible. I also like how the menu looks. Reminds me of Castlevania Lord of Shadows with a book that opens. It goes very well with the theme of the game. And we also have to remember that the game is still in development, so even much more cool things, mechanics and unique ideas are yet to be revealed. All of those will make Crowsworn to be its own unique and cool game, and not just a copy of Hollow Knight. So despite what I just did in this video, we should stop comparing games and instead just enjoy them. If you really want to compare, do it more for fun, not as a hate comment. So, does Crowsworn have a few things taken from Hollow Knight really affect your experience with the game? I certainly believe that's not the case. If a game makes enough to be separate from his inspiration, we should not be mad about that. You need to remember that Mongoose Studio at the end of the day is just another big fan of Hollow Knight, just like you and me. The only difference is that they have taken their passion a step further, and they reference things such as a YouTuber called Relia, who is mostly known for his Hollow Knight videos. They are clearly passionate about this whole world and wants to be a part of it in their own ways, and I think that's awesome. The biggest reason I did this entire video is more of an excuse to talk about my favorite game and the first game that I ever backed. A lot of people are excited for Crowsworn and can't wait to see the day where they will just press the start button and enjoy a good damn game. Update. While I was making this video, a new information appeared that probably will affect the development. Unity just announced that they plan to charge game developers 20 cents per install. That means every time a game is installed to someone's computer, the devs will charge for that. What? Why? Greediness, I guess. But the worst thing is that this also applies for demos, such as the one we just discussed. It also taxes free games, and the worst of all, if you reinstall the game, this also counts. So Unity does not make difference from having 5 people that install the game and having just one person that reinstalls the games 5 times. And also there is the whole problem with pirating. What are you gonna do about that? You need to pay for them who got their game for free? Now we may ask, what this has to do with Crowsworn? Well, Crowsworn is made in Unity, and this kind of thing is a big deal because that means they cannot make another demo without losing money, and being an indie developer, every penny matters. This will just suck a lot of money out of them even if the game is not out. So what they can do is either to continue the development as normal and just take the hit, or switch to another engine, and you can imagine how much of a pain in the ass is that when you have already 2 years into the development, which will mean the release date will be heavily delayed, and this also applies to Silksong, who is 5 years in development. So yeah, a really shitty situation. In response to this, Mongoose Rodeo posted this photo in the comments, showing their opinion on this decision. There is nothing more threatening and dangerous than an angry crow with a sight and a gun. So beware, Unity, and brace yourself. Oh, and they also said that this will not affect the development, so it's all good, at least for now. Okay, update. A lot of stuff is happening, my god! So after the massive backlash, Unity made the same move like Twitch when they wanted to put only their ads and sponsorship. The answer was something around the lines, no. You guys misunderstood. It wasn't us who fucked up everything. This affects only the big creators and it doesn't count for demos and reinstalls, and also for pirated games. Yeah, sorry for us being dumbasses and not understanding how greedy you guys are. I hate when they just can't say what everybody knows. I mean, I know it, you know it, everybody knows, man. To be like, hey guys, we made a mistake and we are sorry. No, they have to say something, oh no, you guys are the ones who didn't understand. Like, goddamn, what they were thinking was gonna happen. But this is already kinda extra. If more updates will come, I will just make another separate video. So, what is your opinion about Crowsworn? Do you think it copied Hollow Knight a bit too much, or you just don't care either way and just are hype about the game? Be sure to let me know your thoughts in the comments. I would love to hear all of them and continue the discussion there. Okay, that's all for today and I will see you in the next video. Adios. Oh, bye.